Morning students. From today I will take this topic refractive errors. It will take around 3 to 4 classes. So what is refraction of light? What is refraction of light? It is a phenomena of change in the path of light when it goes from one medium to the another medium. So when the light passes through from one medium to the another medium, there is a change in the path of light that we call it as a refraction of light. It is basically due to change in the velocity of light when it travels from one medium to the another medium. This is the refraction of light. That is nothing but the change in the path of light when it passes from one medium to the another medium. So this property of light is important for the diffraction on the eye. What are the two refractive surfaces of the eye? First one is cornea and second one is the lens. So coming to the cornea, the reasons for refraction of light is it is because of the curvature of the cornea, and there is a significant difference in the refractive indexes of the eye and the cornea. What is refractive index? It is nothing but the ratio of velocity of light in a vacuum to its velocity of light in specified medium. So this cornea acts as a refractive surface because of its curvature and because of the significant difference between the refractive indexes of the eye and the cornea. So that what happens when the light passes from eye onto the cornea, there is a change in the path of light is seen, that we call it as a refraction of the light. So this cornea acts as one of the refractive surface. This refractive index is nothing but the ratio between the velocity of light in the vacuum to the velocity of light in the specified medium. So along with that, there is a vertical, this cornea acts as a refractive surface because of its curvature, and there is a difference in the diameters of the vertical diameter as well as horizontal diameter. The vertical diameter is around 10.6 mm, and the horizontal diameter is around 11.7 mm, and the actual refractive index of the cornea is 1.37. And the power of the cornea is around plus 43 diopters. It constitutes about 2/3 of the total power of the eye. So the refractive index of the cornea is 1.37 and the power of the cornea is plus 43 diopters. Second refractive surface in the eye is crystalline lens. So what is the thickness of the lens? At birth it is 3.5 to 4 mm, and adult life it is 4.75 to 5 mm. And the radius of curvature is anterior surface it is around 10 mm and posterior surface it is around 6 mm. And refractive index of the lens is at the nucleus, that is which is present at the center, it is around 1.41, and at the poles it is 1.38, and at the equator it is 1.37. And on an average, the refractive index of the lens is 1.39, whereas the refractive index of the cornea is 1.37. And total refractive power is 15 to 18 diopters. It constitutes about 1/3 of the total power of the eye, whereas cornea it is 43 diopters. In the crystalline lens, it is around 15 to 18 diopters. And the accommodative power varies with the age. At birth, it is around 14 to 16 diopters. And at 25 years, it is around 7 to 8 diopters. At 50 years, it is around 1 to 2 diopters. So this is about crystalline lens, second refractive surface. So this lens accounts for about 1/3 of the total refractive power of the eye, that is around 15 to 18 diopters. And accommodation provides a mechanism of focusing at different distances. What are when there is in cataract, because of the optical changes, there is as there is increased opacities in the lens, there is a decrease in the visual acuity is seen, and as there is increase in the refractive index of the lens, there is a myopic shift. Because of if it is a nuclear cataract, there is increase in the refractive index of the lens, and because of that, the plus power will turn into minus power, that we call it as a myopic shift. And because of there is a unilateral cataract, it also leads to monocular diplopia, and because of the diffraction of light, due to change in the refractive index of the lens, there is a glare is seen and colored halos is seen. Colored halos is nothing but a circle of colors are seen around the bright light. So because of the cataractous lens, there is optical changes in the lens, and that leads to decrease in the visual acuity, myopic shift, monocular diplopia, glare, and colored halos. These are the symptoms of the cataracts. When you get a case of cataract, these are the common symptoms we see in cataract patients. Starts with the glare and colored halos, then visual acuity reduction, monocular diplopia, and myopic shift. So this is about the two refractive surfaces of the lens of the eye, that is cornea and the lens. Basically, you have to remember the refractive indexes of the cornea and dioptric power of the cornea, that is around 43 diopters, and refractive index is 1.37, and whereas in the lens, on an average, the refractive index of the lens is 1.39, and total refractive power is 15 to 18 diopters. It constitutes about 1/3 of the total power of the eye, whereas in cornea, it constitutes about 2/3 of the total power of the eye. So coming to the various refractive errors, what is emmetropia? Emmetropia is a normal refraction, that is when the parallel rays of light coming from the infinity are focused on the retina. Then we call it as emmetropia. It is a normal condition, and while passing, the accommodation should be at the rest. When the eye accommodation is at rest, the parallel beam of light rays coming from the infinity are focused onto the retina. Then we call it as emmetropic eye. This is the picture showing the rays which are coming from the infinity are falling, focusing directly onto the retina. So this is called emmetropia. What is ametropia? We call it as ametropia when the parallel rays do not focus on retina. Either they focus in front or behind the retina, then we call it as ametropia. So different causes for ametropia is axial ametropia, where there is a increase or decrease in the length of the eyeball. In case of myopia, there is an increase in the length of the eyeball, that we call it as axial myopia. But in case of hypermetropia, there is a decrease in the length of the eyeball, that we call it as axial hypermetropia. And due to changes in the curvature of the cornea and lens, that we call it as a curvature ametropia. There is increased curvature of the cornea or lens, that leads to myopia. Because of increased curvature, the rays will focus in front of the retina, that leads to condition called myopia. There is a decrease in the curvature of the lens or cornea, that leads to condition called curvature hypermetropia. And because of the changes in the refractive index of the lens, that we call it as index hypermetropia. There is increased refractive index of the lens, that we see in cases of nuclear cataract. It leads to index myopia. If there is a decrease in the refractive index of the lens, that we see in case of cortical cataracts, that we call it as index hypermetropia. And due to abnormal position of the lens, if there is a anterior displacement of the lens, that leads to, because the anterior displacement of the lens, the rays will focus in front of the retina, that leads to positional myopia. And if there is a backward displacement of the lens, or posterior placement of the lens, that leads to positional hypermetropia. So these are the various causes of ametropia. Ametropia is nothing but when the light rays coming from the infinity, when the eye is at when the eye accommodation is at rest, it focuses in front or behind the retina, that we call it as ametropia. So these are the various causes of ametropia. So if the patient is having ametropia, there is definitely there is a refractive error is present. It may be myopia or hypermetropia or any astigmatism. So myopia, we call it as a nearsightedness. Here the rays, which are light rays which are coming from the infinity, are focused in front of the retina. And hypermetropia, we also call it as a farsightedness, because the rays which are coming from the infinity will fall behind the retina. And what is presbyopia? Presbyopia is nothing but that because of the aging process, there is a loss of accommodative ability of the lens, resulting in the doing the near task, that we call it as a presbyopia. This is seen after 40 years of age. Because of the aging process, the accommodative ability of the lens decreases, that leads to condition called presbyopia. What is astigmatism? Here the curvature of the cornea of lens is not spherical, and therefore causes images are blurred on the retina. That we call it as astigmatism. So this is the picture showing emmetropia. That is a normal condition where the rays which are coming from the infinity, when the eye accommodation is at rest, will directly focus on the retina. So this is the normal condition. Here there is no refractive error seen, that we call it as emmetropia. So in the second picture, the rays which are coming from the infinity are focusing in front of the retina. Here it is a retina. The rays are focusing in front of the retina. So this condition, this refractive error, we call it as a myopia. It is also called as nearsightedness. And coming to the hyperopia or hypermetropia, here the rays which are coming from the infinity in eye accommodation interest are focusing behind the retina. So they are focusing behind the retina. So this we condition, this type of this refractive error we call it as a hyperopia or hypermetropia. So there are other types of refractive errors. That is the first one is anisometropia, where the two eyes have different refractive power. The difference between the two eyes is more than 2 diopters. So suppose if the right eye is having -2 diopters power and the left eye is having -5 diopters, here the difference in the refractive error is more than 2 diopters, then we call it as a anisometropia. Second condition is anisoconia. Here whatever the images projected to visual cortex from the two retina are abnormally unequal in size and shape. So whatever the images from which are projected to the visual cortex from the retina are of unequal size and shape, then we call it as a anisoconia. So what is aphakia? Aphakia means lens. Aphakia means the absence of lens. There is an absence of lens in the eye, then we call it as a aphakia. And pseudophakia. So what is pseudophakia? If there is a patient underwent cataract surgery and his cataract lens is replaced by the artificial intraocular lens, then we call it as a pseudophakia. So this is about various refractive errors and about refractive surface of the eye. Coming to the first refractive error, that is myopia. What is myopia? I already discussed. It is a form of refractive error in which the parallel rays of light coming from the infinity are focused in front of the retina with eye accommodation is at rest. So the rays which are coming are focused in front of the retina. That we call it as a myopia. So the patient will have this type of vision. You can see the near objects, but the far objects will be blurred. The patient vision is seen like this. So what are the etiological types? First one is axial myopia. It is a most common type because of the increased length of the eyeball, because of the increased anteroposterior diameter of the eyeball. That anteroposterior diameter we call it as axial length. Because of the increased anteroposterior diameter of the eyeball, it leads to axial myopia. And because of the increased length of the eyeball, the rays will focus in front of the retina. It leads to axial myopia. Second one is curvature myopia. Because of the increased curvature, the increased curvature of the cornea or lens, because these are the two refractive surfaces. There is increase in the curvature of the cornea or lens, it leads to curvature myopia, and there is increase in the refractive index of lens that we see in case of nuclear cataracts. That we call it index myopia. Positional myopia, there is a anterior placement of the lens, then it leads to positional myopia. And myopia due to excessive accommodation, because of the excessive spasms of accommodation, the rays are focused in front of the retina, and that leads to accommodative myopia, so spasms of accommodation. So these are the various etiological types of myopia. Clinically, it is classified into 4 types: congenital, simple or developmental myopia, pathological or degenerative myopia, and acquired myopia. So coming to the congenital myopia, this is commonly seen in premature babies or low birth weight babies. It is unlike simple and pathological myopia, this is a stationary. So whatever the power the baby is having, it is stationary. It will not change or progress. So the power is around 8 to 10 diopters minus power, and it is associated with the increase in the axial length of the eyeball, and there is a convergent squint is seen here. Because of the continuous accommodation, the patient may have convergent squint or esotropia. It is associated with other congenital anomalies like colobomas and aniridia. It also associated with the other congenital anomalies of like coloboma and aniridia. And there is early correction is very important in this type of myopia, because we should dilate the patient with the cycloplegics, and we have to correct the refractive power of the eyeball. If you don't correct the refractive error, it may finally it leads to a condition called amblyopia. So poor prognosis in unilateral cases with severe myopia and anisometropia. The difference in the power between the two eyes is also very much high, and the patient, if there is a unilateral cases, even after correcting the correcting with the glasses, the prognosis is very much less. So this is about congenital myopia, which is a stationary condition, and it is associated with other congenital anomalies. It is mainly seen in premature babies and low birth weight babies. So second one is a simple myopia. Here it may be physiological, or it also called as physiological myopia or school myopia, because it is mainly seen in school going age people, that is around 5 to 10 years of age, and it is results due to normal biological variation in the development of eye. So most of you, if you are having glasses, and you are having -4, most of you are having this type of myopia, that is simple myopia. It is the most commonest type. The age of onset is around 5 to 10 years, and the severe, it is a moderately severe when compared with the congenital and pathological myopias. The power will not exceed 6 diopters, whereas in case of congenital myopia it exceeds up to 8 to 10 diopters. Here it doesn't exceed more than 6 diopters. And the most important thing is we don't see any degenerative changes in the retina or choroid in this case of in this simple myopia. So it is only because of the due to normal biological variation in the development of it. The biological variation is nothing but the increase in the axial length, increase in the curvature of the cornea, like that. Because the aging, because of the developmental process, there is a slight increase in the axial length and curvature of the cornea, and that leads to the simple myopia. It is also called as physiological myopia. Here we don't see any degenerative changes, unlike pathological myopia. What is etiology? It is because of the axial type, where it is maybe physiological because precocious neurological growth in the childhood, there is a mild increase in the axial length of the eyeball, and that leads to axial myopia. And curvature, because of the underdevelopment of the eyeball, there is increased curvature of the eyeball, cornea or lens, that leads to simple myopia. Genetics have a minor role, and because of the role of diet is present, people who are undernourished are more prone for simple myopia. And rarely some excessive near work may cause, it is controversial, but may cause the simple myopia. So these are the etiology of the simple myopia. So what are the symptoms we see in simple myopia? So basically myopia is a short sightedness, that is the rays are focused in front of the retina. We have defective distant vision, and asthenopia symptom. Asthenopia is nothing but it's an eye strain. It manifests as a frontal headache and tiredness of eyes and watering. That these combinedly we call it as a asthenopic symptoms. These are present in simple myopia. Asthenopic symptoms are nothing but the frontal headache, tiredness of eyes, and sleepiness and watering, and rarely photophobia. These all symptoms come under asthenopic symptoms. And the patient may also have a symptom called half shutting of eyes. In order to achieve the better clarity of the distant vision, the patient or child will half shut his eyes and try to achieve better vision. So these are the symptoms of the simple myopia, that is a short-sightedness or defective distant vision. Asthenopic symptoms that includes frontal headache, watering, tiredness and sleepiness, tiredness of eyes, and rarely photophobia and half shutting of eyes. So these are the symptoms of simple myopia. So what are the signs we see in simple myopia? So they have prominent eyeballs. When compared with an emmetropics, these patients will have prominent, that is little bit larger eyeballs. And because of as the eyeball is large, the patient will have deeper anterior chambers. They relatively have a little bit deeper anterior chamber, that is, and there is a large sluggishly reacting pupils. Sorry, this is spelling pupil, PUPIL. They have large sluggishly reacting pupils, and they don't have any degenerative changes in the fundus or vitreous or choroid, so they have normal fundus, except they have some myopic crescent is there. Myopic crescent, and that crescent I will discuss in the pathological myopia part. Except they have mild myopic crescent in the fundus. The remaining fundus is normal, and they have very prominent eyeballs and deeper anterior chambers and large sluggishly reacting pupils. So these are the signs of the simple myopia. So this is about simple myopia. And coming to the pathological myopia, so it is a progressive condition and it is a degenerative condition. So the power goes on increasing during his lifetime, and it starts at the age of 5 to 10 years. It starts at the age of 5 to 10 years. The patient will have high myopia in their adult life, that is around minus 15 to 20 diopters. Whereas in simple myopia, it doesn't cross more than 6 diopters. In congenital, it is around 8 to 10 diopters. But in the case of pathological myopia, the power may reach up to minus 20 diopters. So it's a progressive condition. That is, if the power goes on changing throughout the life, and it is associated with the degenerative changes of the different parts of the eyeball. So pathophysiology involved in pathological myopia is here. The genetic factors have a major role. There is a autosomal dominant inheritance is seen here, and general growth processes have a minor role. That is, the changes during the growing age. There is a because of the genetic factors. There is a increase in the growth of the retina. There is a more growth of the retina. Because of the increase in the growth of the retina, there is a stretching of the underlying structures. Mainly the sclera gets stretched, and that leads to increased axial length. That is because of the stretching of the sclera, there is an increase in the anterior posterior diameter of the eyeball, and because of the increased growth of the retina and stretching of the sclera, that there is a degeneration of the choroid which is present behind the retina. It got degenerated, and we also see degenerative changes in the retina as well as in the vitreous. So we see degenerative changes in the retina, choroid, vitreous, and sclera. So there is here all these parts will have degenerative changes. This finally, because of these degenerative changes, there is a major decrease in the vision of the patient. So this is the pathophysiology involved in pathological myopia. The major role is by genetic factors and minor role is by general growth process. This leads to degenerative changes in the choroid, retina, vitreous, and sclera. So what are the symptoms? We have a defective distant vision. The patient will have a defective distant vision, and there is a condition called muscae volitans. It's nothing but because of degenerative changes in the vitreous get liquefied, and the patient will manifest a black opacities floating in front of the eye. This is nothing but the floaters. They are also called as muscae volitantis. So because of degenerative changes in the vitreous, the patient may manifest floaters, and because of the degenerative changes in the choroid and retina, the patient may also have night blindness. Along with the vitamin A deficiency, this pathological myopia is one of the reasons for the night blindness because of the degenerative changes in the retina and choroid. And the patient, because of the high power, the patient leaves the ability of focusing, and the patient may manifest as a divergent squint, that is a exotropia. The patient also manifests as a divergent squint. So these are the symptoms of the pathological myopia. Coming to the signs, like simple myopia, these patients will also have prominent eyeballs, that is large. They also have large cornea and deep anterior chamber, and the large pupil sluggishly reacting to light. So like the simple myopia, these patients also will have large pupils sluggishly reacting to light. Coming to the various signs in the retina, like simple myopia, these patients will also have a temporal crescent, temporal myopic crescent. This light yellow color is there, no? This is the optic disc, and here in the temporal, this is temporal quadrant. Here we have this C-shaped, crescent-shaped, yellowish, light yellow colored area is present. No, that we call it as a myopic crescent. This is because of distraction of retina from the choroid. Because of the distraction of the retina, because of the overstretching of the retina, there is a distraction of retina from the underlying choroid, and that leads to exposure of the sclera. This appears as a C-shaped, appears as a crescent-shaped area just beside the optic disc. This we call it as a myopic crescent. This myopic crescent is also seen in simple myopia and also in the pathological myopia. So other changes we see in retina is Lacquer cracks. It's nothing but the breaks in the Brooks membrane. These appear as yellowish white lines. These are the Lacquer cracks. This Brooks membrane is the innermost layer of the choroid, and because of the breaks in the Brooks membrane, they appear as a yellowish white lines that we call it as a Lacquer cracks. Here we also see temporal crescent, and we also see some chorioretinal degenerative changes like Foster-Fuchs spots. Here these are the dark red colored circular patches due to retinal pigment epithelial hyperplasia. because of the retinal pigment epithelial hyperplasia, we see a dark red colored spots or patches that we call it as a posterior fugue spots. This also involves a subretinal neovascularization, and this eventually leads to choroidal neovascularization. So one of the finding is posterior fugue spots. And second one is choroidal neovascularization. That means there is a new vessel formation at the level of choroid. This red one is this one is a neovascularization we see in the choroid. And other finding is tessellated fundus. Tessellated fundus is nothing but because of the overstretching of the retina, there is a thinning of the retina is seen, and that leads to normally we do not see any choroidal vessels in the normal retina but in case of pathological myopia, because of the thinning of the retina, the underlying vessels, choroidal vessels can be seen, that we call it as a tessellated fundus. These are the underlying choroidal vessels which are normally not seen, but in case of pathological myopia, because of the overstretching of the retina, there is a thinning of the retina. Because of the thinning, the underlying choroidal vessels can be seen. If you see this sort of fundus, we call it as a tessellated fundus. And other degenerative changes in the retina is lattice degenerations. So these are the lattice degenerations. These may be pigmented or non-pigmented. They associate with the retinal thinning, and the retinal vessels become sclerotic. These retinal vessels become sclerotic, and collagen is laid down. That leads to lattice degenerative changes in the retina. It also associated with the retinal holes and tears. So it also associated with the thinning of the retina. It also associated with the retinal holes and tears. So these are the holes and these are the tears. So this is about lattice degeneration. It associates with the retinal thinning, retinal holes and tears. We also see chorioretinal atrophic patches. Here this is the atrophic area. Chorioretinal atrophic patches also seen because of the overstretching of the retina and thinning of the retina. And these are the various findings in retina. Coming to the sclera, because of the ectasia of the fibrous coat of the eyeball. What is the fibrous coat of the eyeball contains? It's the posteriorly sclera and anteriorly cornea. So because of the ectasia or thinning of the outer fibrous coat of the eyeball lined by the choroid, this leads to excavation of the retinal vessels and dipping of retinal vessels. So here you can see this is the ectasia of the fibrous coat of this white part, and this is a real picture. And because of there is an excavation of the tissue, and because of that there is a dipping of the vessels inside that excavated area of the retina. So when we do ultrasound, here we see the excavated part. If it is in the posterior pole, we call it as a posterior staphyloma. So posterior staphyloma is seen, and and also we see degenerative changes in the vitreous. That is, there is a liquefaction. Normally the vitreous is in jelly form, but in case of pathological myopia, it gets liquefied, and we see lot of vitreous opacities, and eventually it may lead to posterior vitreous detachment. So these are the degenerative changes we see in vitreous. So what are the complications we see in pathological myopia? Because of all these degenerative changes, we see macular hemorrhages and retinal tears and detachments, because as there is a very thin retina and associated with the retinal holes and tears, there is high chance of detachment of the retina. This is the detachment, and as there is a neovascularization in the choroid, there is a high chance of choroidal hemorrhages, and there is also these patients are more prone for complicated cataracts and primary open angle glaucoma. Because of the thinned out retinal nerve fiber layer, these patients are more prone for primary open angle glaucoma. So these are all complications of the pathological myopia, where every part of the eye is involved. That is, retina is involved as a retinal detachment, cornea lens is involved as a complicated cataracts, glaucoma is involved. Primary open angle glaucoma is one of the risk factors for the primary open angle glaucoma is high myopia. So almost every part of the eye is involved. So this is about pathology and complications, pathophysiology and complications of the pathological myopia. Coming to treatment, so any type, in case of any type of myopia, what is the treatment? We give optical correction, that is we prescribe glasses. And what type of lens we prescribe? Usually prescribe concave lenses, because as there is already increased curvature of the cornea, when we prescribe convex lenses, the convex lenses will have more curvature at the center. So if you prescribe convex lenses, what happens? Already there is increased curvature, and we are also increasing further. We are increasing curvature of the eye by putting convex lenses. So these concave lenses have flat center part, whereas the convex lenses have curved center part. So in order to reduce the curvature of the eye, we have to introduce flat concave lenses which are having flat area at the center of the lens. So because of that, as there is a flattening, there is a decreased curvature of the cornea. This lenses helps in focusing the light onto the retina. So we prescribe concave glasses in case of myopia. So what are the other treatment modalities? We can one of the modalities orthokeratology. Here we ask the patient to use rigid gas permeable contact lens. We will ask the patient to wear it overnight, and this rigid gas permeable contact lens helps in molding the cornea into desired shape, so that it will decrease the curvature of the cornea, and in that way it helps in increasing the refractive power of the cornea and helps in better vision of the patient. So this is non-surgical procedure. Here we use rigid gas permeable contact lens to mold the cornea into desired shape. This we call it as a orthokeratology. It is rarely used, rarely prescribed. And other options is surgical correction. Where there are various surgeries are there to treat the myopia. In that, first one is radial keratotomy. So what is radial keratotomy? Here we give multiple peripheral cuts on the cornea, leaving the central optical zone, central 4 to 5 mm of the cornea. We give multiple radial cuts at the periphery of the cornea. These cuts, upon healing, they decreases the curvature of the cornea. This procedure is also obsolete now. Previously in 1990s and late 90s, this procedure was introduced and it was widely used then. Now it is obsolete. Here, in radial keratotomy, we give peripheral cuts, various radial cuts at the peripheral part of the cornea, leaving the central part. These cuts, upon healing, they flatten the corneal surface. In that way, they decrease the curvature myopia. And second procedure is photorefractive keratectomy, or PRK. This is the other surgical option. Here we use excimer laser. Excimer laser is used on central cornea by photoablation of the central corneal stroma. Here what we do is, in the photorefractive keratectomy, we remove the epithelium, we scrape off the epithelium of the cornea, and after scraping of the epithelium of the cornea, the exposed part of the cornea is, to the exposed part of the cornea, we introduce excimer laser. Because of this excimer laser, it ablates the cornea and remove the unwanted corneal tissue, and that leads to decreasing the curvature of the cornea. So epithelium is removed, is followed by excimer laser stromal ablation. So this is about photorefractive keratectomy. This is more this is more expensive than radial keratotomy. We see residual corneal haziness, and post-operative recovery is slow. As we remove the epithelium, in order to achieve healing of the epithelium, it will take a little bit more time. Here the patient will have very much post-operative pain, because we have to remove the epithelium, and there is a delayed reepithelialization. It will takes 48 to 72 hours for reepithelialization, and there is a chance of infection and central corneal infiltrations, and there is high chance of overcorrection or undercorrection. So even after using excimer laser to ablate the cornea, there is a high chance of overcorrection or undercorrection. So if there is undercorrection, then what happens? The patient will still have the refractive power. But suppose if there is if the patient refractive error is myopic refractive error is -4, if If you undercorrect the patient, the power may reduce to -2, but still the patient will have the refractive error. If you overcorrect, if the patient power is -4, if you overcorrect, use lot of laser and overcorrected the error, then the -4 may turn into +2. So the myopic patient will turn into hypermetropes. So that is overcorrection. The reversal of the refractive error may occur. So there is high chance of under and overcorrections in case of PRK or photorefractive keratectomy. So these are the complications of the PRK. So nowadays we are using this procedure also. It is not obsolete like radial keratotomy. So the third surgical option is LASIK. Here also we use excimer laser only, but here we create a corneal flap. So this is the corneal flap with the help of an instrument called microkeratome or by a specialized laser called femtosecond laser. We create a corneal flap. So here in the instrument, we are creating a flap. Here also the use of femtosecond laser, we have to create a flap. So in this picture you can see this is the flap. So with the help, we take a slice of the cornea and we create a flap of the cornea, and we flip open the flap of the cornea like a cover of the book. Like we open the cover of the book, we flip open the corneal flap, and the exposed part of the cornea, after opening the flap, the exposed part of the cornea to the exposed part of the cornea, we introduce excimer laser, and we ablate the cornea stroma to the desired shape of the cornea. With the help of this laser, we ablate the corneal stroma, and to achieve the desired shape of the cornea, that is, we reduce the curvature of the cornea. After exposing this part to the laser, and then this flap is replaced back. So again, like closing the cover of the book, we replace this flap onto the laser treated part of the cornea, and we allow it to heal naturally without any stitches. So this is about LASIK. Here we use excimer laser. This is the conventional LASIK. We have to use where we use excimer laser. We create a flap with the help of instrument called microkeratome or specialized laser called femtosecond laser. After creating the flap, we flip open the flap, and the exposed part of the cornea is treated with the excimer laser, and we ablate the corneal stroma to the desired shape to achieve the reduction in the curvature of the cornea. And then we replace the corneal flap back onto the laser treated part of the cornea, and we allow it to heal naturally without any stitches. This is about conventional LASIK. So the instrument which is used here is microkeratome. These are the parts of the microkeratome. This is the microkeratome, and we can also create a flap with the help of a laser called femtosecond laser. So what are the basic principle of these lasers used in LASIK? The two types of lasers is used, that is excimer laser and femtosecond laser. This excimer laser is ablates upon contact with the surface. So this excimer laser, they photoablate the corneal stroma wherever it gets contact. So if you expose this part of the cornea, you ablate only the surface of contact of the laser. Unlike femtosecond laser, it has different tissue interactions where it can interact with the tissue. The tissue interaction is at different levels, not only at the surface of the contact. If you want to ablate the midstroma without without causing any damage to the epithelium or superficial stroma, with the help of femtosecond laser, you can ablate the tissue. But unlike in case of excimer laser, it ablate the tissues where it is at the surface of the contact only. So it uses the excimer laser uses short wavelength, unlike the femtosecond laser where it uses longer wavelength to achieve photodisruption. So when compared with the excimer laser, with the help of femtosecond laser, we can cut the precise cuts can be achieved. So the femtosecond laser is very much more superior when compared with the excimer laser. Because the excimer laser may only act at the surface of the contact, but the femtosecond laser have different tissue interactions. It can act at the different levels without causing damage to the superficial parts. So this is about the basic principle of the excimer laser. So in conventional LASIK, there are different types of LASIKs are there, but in conventional LASIKs, we use excimer laser for ablating the corneal tissue. But if you want to blade-free surgery, instead of microkeratome, we can use femtosecond laser for creating the flap in conventional LASIK. So when the LASIK is when the patients are eligible for LASIK, the patient is more than 20 years of age with the absence of any corneal pathologies, and the patient should be very much motivated, and the patient should have stable refraction for at least 12 months. So these are the conditions for LASIK surgery. The patient should cross at least 20 years of age, and they should have stable refractive power for at least 1 month, at least for 1 year, and patient should be very much motivated, and the patient should not have any corneal pathologies. So what are the advantages when compared with the PRK and RK? It is a minimal or no post-operative pain is seen in LASIK, and the patient is recovery of the post-surgical recovery is fast, and there is a no risk of perforation as in radial keratotomy, because in radial keratotomy we give incisions. Now there is a chance of perforation of the cornea, but here it is no such risk. And the residual haziness in PRK, which is seen here, it is not seen because we are not damaging the epithelium of the cornea, and it may correct up to -12 diopters. So these are the advantages of the LASIK when compared with the PRK and RK. So whereas other LASIK laser-based procedures are PRK also, in PRK also we use excimer laser. In conventional LASIK also we use excimer laser, and custom LASIK. The custom LASIK is custom. Custom LASIK means here we use some technologies called wavefront technology and corneal topography, and with the help of that we know the complete details about the shape and curvature of the cornea, and we correlate the LASIK with the measurements we achieved, which we measured with the help of corneal topography and wavefront technology. And with this custom LASIK, the results are very much better when compared with the conventional LASIK, because we know the complete details about the cornea in case of custom LASIK because of with the help of corneal topography, so that the results are better when compared with the conventional LASIK in custom LASIK. And its last one is epi-LASIK. Here we don't make any flap. Only the epithelium is slightly removed, and we ablate the cornea. And the latest technology is Relic Smile. This is the latest advancement in the LASIK laser-based refractive procedures. The Relic is nothing but the refractive lenticular extraction. Refractive lenticular EX is